It's another day that doesn't feel like spring, but we know it's coming, and to get ready, we're going to paint flowers. I have a simple daisy today. This is one that I saw over at the gardens on College in Fort Collins. And it is a white flower, so today's lesson will be negative painting. I drew it out quickly, transferred the drawing, and being that it's a white flower, I have a clean area in my palette here, and I'm going to mix some colors. I see blue. The flower itself is emitting some purple. There is a bee in the center, and there's some interesting little shapes in there. So the color white is the reflection of all colors. So we can do quite a bit to put color in here as long as it's light in value. I'm going to mix up a little puddle of blue with a lot of water in it. It will be very transparent. I'm going to mix up a puddle of purple with a lot of water in it, keeping it transparent. And I'm thinking of analogous colors. Those are ones beside each other in the color wheel, and I'm looking for a pink. I have a alizarin crimson, and there's a couple of reds. They're not quite pink enough for my desire, so I'm going to go scoop some white into them. And a lot of water. And I think that's what I'll start with right there. I'm going to start with the blue and find some of the shadows. All I'm doing is putting my round pointed tip down and allowing the brush to make the brush stroke. If you wanted some softness, we could clean out the brush, blot it on a sponge, and just run some soft water along one edge so that it's sharp-edged and soft-edged. A variety of edges in our shadows is always welcome to the eye. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to tap some of that pink in here where it's wet and let it mingle a little bit. Back to my blue. I'm just going to go around and find the leaves. I'm not even sure where I am. You get lost in flowers. So use your finger and point where you're at, where your eye is at. And then when you go over here, you can go quickly back to where your eye was looking. That is a helpful tip the more complicated your subject matter gets too. I am making separations. Sometimes flowers look really, white flowers look really great without the lines in between them. It's like the spaces in teeth. The lines between the teeth often don't help you in a portrait. I didn't draw some of these flowers' petals in, so I can now. I have a drawing to help me decide what I want, and I can amend that. I do not have to stay true to the photo. Remember, we're making a painting. I just added a leaf, a petal rather, there, and let's see if we can get some more shadows here. Yeah, I'll throw a little purple in that blue. It's nice to have a variety of color. This is really, really subtle work too. We're painting air and shadow. Now here's one I kind of see the shadow. Don't put things in that you don't see. Let's add a petal there. It looks a little empty without one. You can change the design any way you see. I left off a petal here. Let's draw it in with the brush. There we go. And I dropped in some purple. And I scooped up some blue. And I'm going to find the shadow there. And I'm going to add some pink. Back to blue. Back to blue. And I need just a few little shadows. I chose to put the colors in the flower first instead of doing the background first, because the background might run as we get wet next to it. And I want this to be nice and clean. And that way we don't have to deal with the colors in the flower after we decide where all the shadows are. Okay. Now, while that dries, very simple, very quick. You can spend as much time as you wish on it. While that shadow dries, I'm going to underpaint. Well, I've got too much wet in here. I think I'll get in trouble if I underpaint the bee or the center. Let's find the background of the flower, because a lot of my edges are dry now. So I'm going to mix up some green. You may have a tube of green. You may have to mix your own green from blue and yellow. I'm going to start with, I've got some like sap green. It might even be something darker than that. Let me see what that is. It is sap green right here. Sap green, and I want some dark. To make your green darker, you might have to go put some phthalo blue in it. You might have some shadow green already in a tube. That'd be great. Here's another way to neutralize green. I dipped into alizarin crimson up here, and I'll put that in and mix up a really dark green. Now I've got dark. And then I'll clean out my brush, and I'm going to mix some brighter green. I just went into straight yellow. That was bismuth vianodate yellow. Let's go get a little piece of that phthalo blue in there and made my own green. That's a really bright, nice green. I'm going to put some yellow out here so I can make it even brighter should I want to. Okay, now let's find the edge of our flower, and I'm looking for an area that has dried. Let's go up here, and I'm just going to start. That's way bright, but I'm working wet into wet, and I'm going to pick off this little corner that I can control, and I'm going to paint the background around the flower. I know we don't like the negative word, but that's really what we're doing. We're painting around the positive shape, the flower, and that is called the negative space. And there it was too wet. So I could have a fit and chase it and make a mess, or I could just let the watercolor do its thing and come back and fix it later, because you can fix anything. And I know it's kind of exciting when something happens and it gets all of your attention and you get distracted. And chase it around until it becomes mud. Let's trust that the watercolor will solve the problem. Now, if I wanted to take a little breather, I ended where a sharp edge where the petal goes off. Here, I could just add some water and soften it out, and then come back and do something else later. And while that's wet, I wanted to drop a little bit of the bright green here and there. And you could have just some marks that would be interesting. Do whatever you want. Now I'm working on this paper in my accordion sketchbook that we made. And this paper is Arch's cover. and it's very absorbent. I do not have a lot of fixing power on it, so I will have to get in and get out. And it's time to change the color every inch. The sharpest, most defined areas might be near our center of interest, although these little sketchbooks are just ideas. So I went through another corner, softened that out so I can go back and fiddle a little bit. Let's drop in some dark next to the flower. And let's drop some water in, and let's drop some yellow in. Now I'll go back and continue on my merry way. If you're having trouble with lines happening where you don't like it, you could wet the area first and then drop in the color. You risk it being more diluted doing that. And I want the darkest areas next to the flower. So I'm going back and reloading my brush. My sketchbook, just by the nature of the way it's created, is making a natural incline, and my paint is running this way. So I have to take advantage of that. You could stop with this quarter and do some fussing like we just did, or continue. It's up to you. I know I move fast, but that's because if I don't move fast, the paint will set up and then I will have no decisions I can make. I'll have stripy lines. So let's just get this in, and if it's wet enough, you can do some charging the wash with dropping in some yellow or blue. Maybe some blue would be fun. I could make lines and marks like it's leaves and stems, or I could leave it soft. It's totally up to you. Everything is correct. I'm going to clean up my brush and tap some water in. I like this kind of sloppy dotty. I like the paint to look like paint. And I like watercolor to be transparent and look like the medium that made it. Okay. Cleaning out my brush. Now in the center it is dry, and I want to put this yellow orange, and I'm thinking of the color of the bee and the yellow in the stamens. We'll put in the yellow, let it dry, then come back over top with the black. So let's underpaint it with yellow. I always choose yellow first because yellow contaminates so easily. So I'm doing straight yellow. I'm using that same bismuth vianodate that I did, and I didn't get the bee drawn on here, so I'm going to draw it with my brush now. And his head is right in here. And then I want some of those yellow stamens to pop out, so I'm just going to do that. And you are saying to yourself, that is so yellow compared to the photo that is orange, and you would be totally right. I don't have any orange. I'm going to make some by mixing a red biased yellow and a yellow biased red, and I'm going to just tap some orange around to warm that bee up even more. So now he's a little more orange. If you have some orange, you're in luck. It'll be just fine. You could use that. Okay, that's all I want to do. I left some white areas. I don't know why. Because I could, I guess. We're going to come out with some dark and some purple. So now I want that to dry. Want that to dry, and while it's drying, go get some salt. I took a little package of salt and put it in a container so I can grab a pinch of salt. And we are going to mix up a dark. Now I see purple in the flower, so I'm going to recharge my purple pile with dark purple so I can get some of that out. And this is phthalo blue. That's also dark. And I might take the time right now to mix up some dark green just in case I want to go back anywhere. I'm dropping the red into the green, alizarin red, and sap green to make this very, very dark green, and a little phthalo blue. If you don't have alizarin, these reds that are biased yellow, like cadmium, this is pyrrole, this is scarlet, they will tint, add white, rather than a red that's biased blue that will darken, that will shade. So it needs to be a dark if you want to make a dark. All right. That quickly, a lot of that has absorbed, so I am going to put this pretty little purple on the edge. And that's too dark. I'm going to dip my brush into some water and see if I can make it purple. It looked black. I want some purple to show up. I'm going to clean out my brush and pull out the color with just water. And I'm going to put some purple out on the other side. This is actually the color of the flower. These are African daisies, and they come in all kinds of crazy colors and beautiful centers. I'm going to put some red in there. Once again, to mix a pretty purple, any red and blue will kind of beef that up. So that's what I did right there. I threw some red in it. And then you get a mingling, a much more interesting looking purple. Here's some more red in there so it's not all just the same. The top here is going to be the bee. So I'm going to let this dry so that my next little magic trick works. I'm kind of plotting. What am I going to do? Let's work on the bee here. So he's got some little stripes. I'm just dotting the stripe, and I'm not making a solid because I think that's more interesting. I'm dotting and making tiny marks to make this fuzzy bee's stripes. I've got to find his head here. Let's see, I think his eye is right there. I'm going to draw him in. There's his eye. And he has little antennas that I think are neat looking. Or maybe that's his wing. Oh, I bet it's a wing that's coming out so transparent. That's what it is. So I'm going to make that a little more apparent that that's what it is. Okay. And he's got a rather large leg that is laden with pollen that he's collecting. So I'm going to go around that so it looks like it's his leg. And I'm going to take some time here and put the dark on the underside of that bee that's going to end up being the dark center of the flower. And then I'm going to try something. This may or may not work. Remember my salt? I've got it here ready to go. I'm dipping my brush into the purple. I'm going to save a couple of the bits of yellow because I'm afraid my salt won't work. I'm not trusting it. So there's that, and then I'm going to take my salt with a pinch and put it onto the purple. Now here's my theory in here. The salt should eat out and bring us back to the yellow underneath. And if it doesn't, I've saved some just in case. So hopefully that will work out just fine. And you know what? We are almost done. This is a real simple flower. I thought I'd be merciful on you just in case you didn't want to make a huge leap into complicated flowers. Look at, I just made a line there and put some dark on either side of it, and I clean my brush out and I will just wet it and mingle it into the background, and now there's a stem. You can do as much of that as you want, and hopefully this will be a really pretty center there, and you can have just as much fun as you want with the time involved in making this little critter and a beautiful flower. So I did a really simple one. If you want, I'm going to post a really complicated one, and you can choose what you want to do next Tuesday in class. Welcome spring.